All right, here we go with example 2. So it says complete the table of values and plot the graph. So we have the equation y equals 3x minus 4. Now concept 2 was dealing with creating these input-output tables where you were given the x values, you plugged them in, and you were getting practice with then getting these output y values. If you feel like you could still benefit from practice with that, then I strongly encourage that you pause the video right now and you take -3, -1, 1, 3, and 5, and you get some practice with plugging those values into our rule of y equals 3x minus 4 to see if you get the corresponding y values. If you're feeling like you have a good handle on that, then then you don't have to work through plugging each of those in. I know that your textbook walks you through plugging in each of those values, but what I want to focus on with this concept 3 is taking this table with these values and graphing them. So I'm going to copy down the table from the textbook. So when x is -3, y is -13. When x is -1, y is -7. When x is 1, y is -1. When x is 3, y is 5. And when x is 5, y is 11. And we're getting these y values by plugging those x values in to this equation 3x minus 4. And you can read through your textbook here, and it'll walk you through the process of plugging in each of those x values. What I want us to focus on is graphing them, taking this table and creating a graph to represent a picture, a visual of this equation, y equals 3x minus 4. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create my XY grid. Okay, my Cartesian grid here. And I'm going to label the X and Y axis. Now, my X goes from a -3 to a +5. So I need to make sure that the negative and positive side of my X-axis is able to fit those values of X. So I made it to -5 on the left side of the X-axis. And I made it to +6 on the right side. My y-axis goes from a smallest value of -13 to a largest value of 11, so I need to make sure that I can fit all of those. If you didn't draw a long enough y-axis, you can erase it and make it a little bit longer, like I might need to do for this one. Or you can go by a smaller scale, so you could have every tick mark represent 2, and that's fine. I am going to go by 1s though. Can't quite fit it, so I made it not far enough to make it to 11 here. So I'm going to extend this. There we go. So I made it just to 11 here. Now I'm going to do 13 tick marks down, and I will likely need to extend this even further. So I'm going to erase this and make the bottom part of my y-axis go a lot further down. Oops, but I need it to connect to here. There we go. All right, so -13 is this very last tick mark that I have here. There we go. And I marked it at -7 just to kind of, for easier purposes of being able to keep track of it all. You did not need to go by 1s though. Obviously my XY grid here looks a little messy because I went by 1s and that it's really long on the y-axis, and so you could have went by a scale of 2 if you would have rather, depending on how much space you have, but know that either way is okay. Now I'm going to plot each of these points. So I have the point -3, -13, which means I'm going to go back 3 units on the x-axis, so 1, 2, 3, and then from there I'm going to go down 13 units, and my very last tick mark is 13, so I know that if I follow this all the way down, I'll end up then plotting a point down here where it's all the way down to -13. Now I'm going to plot the point -1, -7. So I'm going to go back 1 on the x-axis and then down 7. I'm going to plot the point 1, -1. 1 is positive for x, so I'm going to go forward 1 unit and then down 1 unit because my y value is negative. And if it's helpful for these to be labeled, you can do that as well. You don't have to label them, but if it's helpful for you to visually see what points are being plotted, you can do that. And then we have 3, 5. And then the last one is 5, 11. So I'm going to go forward 5 and then up 11 units. And then this is usually the trickiest part, is now we want to connect these points with as straight of a line as we can. So what I would recommend doing is seeing if you can find a ruler somewhere or the edge of a paper or something to where you can connect these points with as straight of a line as possible. And I am trying to use the straight edge tool on my iPad, and that is even not working. But do your very best to draw as straight of a line as possible. And I always put arrows on the ends because technically this line is going to continue. Just because we can only see this part of the picture of this line, 3x minus 4, it technically goes on forever in both directions, so I have arrows to represent that. And if you scroll down and look at example 2, you can see that these are all the points that they have here as well. And their line is much straighter than mine is, but also this was computer generated and mine is handwritten. So know that it's okay if your line isn't perfect. It just takes practice and it will get better. All right, next we're going to move on to example 3. So it says create a table of values and plot the points to draw the graph of the following equation. So we have y equals 2x minus 3. So I'm going to set us up for example 3. And it's y equals 2x minus 3. Now here, did they give us a set? All right, so they said first use the equation to calculate the output values of y, and it says any number can be plugged in for x to graph, usually picking some negative values, 0, and some positive values will give you a good amount of numbers to graph. And so the textbook here went from -2 to +2. But it's true, you really can pick any numbers that you want. I usually pick numbers that are some that are negative and some that are positive, but are still small in value, so it's a little bit easier to do the math. So here they use -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. So off to the side here, I'm going to go through plugging these in. First, plugging in -2 would give me -4 minus 3, so -7. Then plugging in -1 would give me -3 minus 3, which is -6. Then plugging in 0, you would get 2 times 0, which is 0 minus 3, which is -3. Oops. Plugging in 1, you would have 2 times 1 minus 3, which is 2 minus 3, which is -1. And plugging in 2, so 2 times 2 minus 3, which is 4 minus 3, which is 1. So I know I went through that relatively quickly, but again, you can pause the video and rewatch this if you would like, but really plugging those values in was just a review of the Concept 2 lesson of plugging those in. What I want to focus on now is then graphing. So I need to create an x and y axis that's going to fit x values from -2 to +2 and y values from -7 to 1. So I'm drawing this here, labeling X and Y. My X's went to -4 on the left side and +4 on the right side. And -10 from my Y's down. And +8 going up. Now I didn't have to go that far to +8 or all the way down to -10, but I had room, so I just kept going with the tick marks. We just at least have to be able to fit the points we have within our table. Graphing these points, -2, -7, means I'm going to go backwards 2 units on the x-axis and then down 7 units for the y-axis. -1, -6 means I go backwards 1 unit on the x-axis, then I go down 6. The point 0, -3, so 0 means I stay here at this center, but then I go down 3 units. Now I have the point 1, -1, and then 2, 1. And again, after that, connect them with as straight of a line as you can, and then I put arrows on the end. Right, there are 2 more examples, so examples 4 and 5, and we will do those in the next video.